Hi everyone. I was watching a TED talk recently entitled "Why is Everybody Starting to Sound like ChatGPT?" And the guy was speaking so quickly and using such advanced English. I thought it might be a good idea to break it down and explain things. So we'll start with a simple question. How confident are you? Really confident that what you see online is real? Most people would say pretty confident. We like to believe we can spot something fake. To spot just means to recognize or identify something quickly. We assume we can tell when an image is AI generated, or when an opinion looks extreme, or when something feels exaggerated. We assume we can tell. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Our brains are not as good at this as we think, especially at a subconscious level. Subconscious meaning happening below our awareness without us noticing it. In a way, it's like looking into a mirror that slightly stretches every reflection. At first you wouldn't notice, but over time you might start believing that reflection is accurate. And that's what's happening online. In many countries, especially the US, researchers have noticed a growing perception gap. A perception gap is the difference between what we think others believe and what they actually believe. People consistently overestimate how radical or extreme other people's political opinions are. To overestimate means to think something is bigger or stronger or more extreme than it really is. Why? Why do we do this? Because social media platforms, they don't show us reality. They show us what performs best. To perform meaning to get clicks or comments and attention. Extreme opinions, they travel faster. They spread quickly. They travel faster. And neutral opinions, they barely move. And when controversial content spreads faster, algorithms pick it up. To pick something up means to notice and amplify it, to pick it up. The algorithms pick it up. The result is a version of reality that feels louder, angrier, and more divided than the real world actually is. Over time, we absorb this extreme version. To absorb means to take something in mentally. We absorb this extreme version and we begin to confuse it with reality itself. And if you move from social media to AI, for instance, when you talk to a chatbot, it feels like you're reading normal English. But in reality, you are reading model-generated language. Model-generated meaning produced by a trained algorithm, not a human mind. This is where it gets interesting. Every AI model is trained on data, and that data is filtered, meaning selected, filtered. It's cleaned and it's shaped before being used. Filtered. The way a model speaks depends on who trained it, what texts were used, and how often certain patterns appeared. For example, and the guy used this in the TED talk, studies have shown that the word delve, this means to investigate something deeply. This appears unusually often in AI-generated text, because during training, that word was overrepresented, meaning appearing more frequently than it does in normal speech. Over time, the AI didn't just copy this pattern, it reinforced it. To reinforce something is to strengthen it through repetition. And then something unexpected happened. Humans started using that word more too. In spontaneous conversation, people began saying delve more often. Spontaneous means unplanned and natural. And they began saying delve more often, even when they weren't aware of it. This is what we call linguistic drift. Linguistic drift is a gradual change in language use over time. So the machine changed the language, and then the language changed the humans. This creates what we call a positive feedback loop. A feedback loop is a cycle where output then becomes input, and it strengthens itself. This is how it works. AI models represent reality in a certain way. We assume that representation is accurate. We copy it in our own speech and behavior, and the AI is trained again using our data, and the cycle repeats. In other words, we train the machine, and then the machine trains us back. You can see the same process in culture. Again, in the TED Talk, he used the word hyperpop, a musical genre. This term, hyperpop, wasn't widely used until algorithms noticed a cluster. A cluster means a group of similar users or behaviors. The algorithm noticed a cluster of listeners with overlapping tastes. And once a playlist was created, the genre suddenly felt real. People started asking what counts as hyperpop, what doesn't. This is called categorization. Categorization meaning the act of placing things into defined groups. So the label hyperpop didn't just describe the trend, it actually created it. As more listeners identified with the genre, they felt a personal connection, they identified with the genre, more musicians began producing music that fit the category. And because platforms like Spotify want to keep users engaged meaning actively listening and not leaving the app, the algorithm pushed the trend even harder. Eventually, it became impossible to tell whether the trend was organic, meaning naturally developed, organic, or artificially inflated, made bigger by algorithmic promotion. This happens with products and lifestyle trends. Maybe a small number of people are interested in designer chocolate. The algorithm detects the signal, notices early signs of interest, detects the signal, and shows it to similar users. And then businesses, they jump on the bandwagon. To jump on the bandwagon is to copy a trend because it's popular. Influencers do the same because they want to go viral. They want to spread extremely fast online, go viral. But there's a catch. Platforms like TikTok, they don't know who you truly are. They only see simplified data, reduced, incomplete, simplified data. Your real desires are complex, they're emotional and contradictory. The algorithm can't capture that. And to be fair, it's not trying to. Its real goal is monetization, meaning turning attention into money. That's the goal of the algorithm. And this wouldn't be so worrying if it only affected shopping habits or music taste. But it goes further. Research now suggests that AI responses in different languages can reflect the political climate, meaning the dominant political attitudes of a place. It can reflect the political climate of the training data. For example, in regions where training texts are limited and conservative, AI outputs may sound more conservative too. So you have to ask yourself, if someone regularly interacts with a conservative-leaning AI, could that influence how they think? And what happens when powerful individuals directly interfere? We know that Elon Musk has modified his chatbot when he disliked its responses, and that his platform, X, formerly Twitter, amplifies his content. And that raises a serious question. Are millions of users being nudged toward a particular ideology? To nudge means to influence gently and indirectly. So are the millions of users being nudged toward a particular ideology? None of these tools are neutral. Everything you see is filtered through layers of profit, engagement, metrics, and incorrect assumptions about who you are. When we forget this, we fall into what we call survivorship bias, meaning we focus only on what succeeds and we ignore what disappears. We actually mistake visibility for importance. And here's the final thought. If you start speaking like a machine, you might also start thinking like one. So it's important to ask yourself, why am I seeing this? Why am I repeating this? Who benefits from this being popular? Because if you don't ask those questions, their version of reality becomes yours. And once that happens, it's very hard to tell where reality ends and the algorithm begins. Some of the key language and ideas from this episode. The perception gap is the difference between belief and reality. To overestimate, that's to think something is more extreme than it is. Overrepresented, appearing more often than normal. To reinforce is to strengthen through repetition. A feedback loop. This is a cycle where output eventually becomes input, artificially inflated, made bigger by algorithms. Monetization. This is turning attention into profit. And survivorship bias, focusing only on what is visible or successful. We had a few phrasal verbs. To pick up, that's to notice and amplify. Jump on the bandwagon. This is very common. This is to follow a trend because it's popular. Go viral, spread rapidly online. To tap into is to use or exploit a trend. To think through, that's to consider something carefully. Think it through, we say. Idioms, sayings we used. Hold up a mirror. That's to reflect reality. Blur the line. If you hear the words blur the line, this means to remove clear distinctions. So stay real. That means remain authentic and critical. That's everything for today. Thank you for listening. This is Listen. Share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, bye-bye for now.